Imagine running 10 kilometers at a brisk, sustained trot. Now, imagine doing that in -6 degrees Celsius weather.
Right, which is about 21 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
So, you are absolutely freezing.
You are freezing. Now, add the final brutal kicker to this. You are doing this at 11,500 feet above sea level.
Yeah, where the air is so incredibly thin that simply walking fast can make you feel like you're breathing through a narrow straw.
Exactly. And today we are taking a deep dive into the biological off-road vehicles that do exactly that every single day. We're talking about the working animals of the high Himalayas.
It's just a remarkable topic. And to really get to the bottom of how these animals survive this, we are looking at a fascinating 2018 study from the Indian Journal of Animal Sciences.
Yeah, it investigates the absolute extreme physiological limits of endurance in working ponies.
Right, specifically looking at how their bodies cope with an environment that honestly actively wants to shut them down.
When we think about the story of human survival, we almost always focus on the tools we invented or like the crops we cultivated.
Sure, the human ingenuity aspect.
Yeah, but we completely gloss over this massive, unsung hero in our history. The horses, the ponies, the mules, the yaks, even camels and donkeys.
Oh, absolutely. They've been there for everything.
Mhm.
Transportation, agriculture, military operations, disaster response.
Right. For thousands of years, these animals have been indispensable partners. And even today, right now, in a world utterly obsessed with technology and artificial intelligence, there are still vast regions where motorized transport is literally impossible.
Precisely. And the region focused on in this study is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
We are looking at the trans-Himalayan region of Leh Ladakh in India.
I really want you, listening to this, to try and picture this setting. You are standing at 3,500 meters of elevation.
Which is about 11,500 feet.
Right. It is a cold, arid environment. It's essentially a freezing desert sitting at the roof of the world.
Which is crucial context for what we're about to discuss today. Because at that altitude, the cold is really only half the battle.
What's the other half?
The real enemy is something called hypobaric hypoxia.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is hypobaric hypoxia?
So it means the atmospheric pressure is so low that there simply isn't enough oxygen physically driving into the bloodstream with each breath.
Wow.
Yeah, and you combine that lack of oxygen with freezing temperatures, intense solar radiation during the day, rugged terrain, and a massive risk of dehydration.
It sounds like another planet.
It basically is. Physiologically speaking, it is one of the most demanding, hostile environments on Earth.
Okay, so if this environment is so incredibly hostile, why are we studying these specific animals? I mean, the subjects of this research are Zanskar ponies, right?
Yes, the Zanskar pony. They are native to the Himalayas.
So they're naturally adapted to these cold desert conditions. If they already live up there, why do we need to test them?
Well, because even native adaptations have breaking points. These Zanskar ponies are the absolute backbone of logistics for both civilian populations and military units in these remote locations.
Right, they carry the food, the medicine, the ammunition, everything.
Exactly. But here is the problem. When these native ponies are drafted into service and put through an acclimatization period before doing heavy labor, a shocking number of them actually fail.
Wait, fail how? Like they just can't do the work.
Worse than that, unfortunately. They get severely sick, they demonstrate extremely poor load-carrying capacity, or, tragically, they experience sudden death during deployment.
Oh, wow. That is awful.
It is. And from a logistical standpoint, you can't afford to find out an animal is going to fail when it's halfway up a mountain pass carrying critical medical supplies.
Right, it's like, imagine you were driving a heavily loaded truck up a steep mountain pass, but your dashboard is completely blank.
I love that analogy, yes.
Like, you have no temperature gauge, no oil pressure reading, no check engine light. You are just driving, totally blind, hoping the engine doesn't suddenly explode.
That is an excellent way to look at it. The researchers realized there was virtually zero objective data capable of predicting a pony's endurance under real, high-altitude field conditions.
We couldn't read their biological dashboard.
Exactly. We needed to find their biomarkers.
Right. We needed measurable biological indicators floating around in their blood and their bodies that act as those warning lights.
Yes. We need to know which specific lights predict if the pony's biological engine is operating normally or if it's overheating and about to catastrophically fail.
Because think about what happens under the hood when you are simply standing still at 11,500 feet.
Yeah.
The reduced oxygen forces your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, your immune system, your metabolism to work significantly harder just to maintain basic life support.
Right. Now, Add strenuous endurance exercise to that.
It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It really is a totally unique compounding combination of physical and environmental strain. It forces the body into pure crisis management mode.
So to find these missing dashboard warning lights, the researchers essentially had to put these ponies through a high-altitude boot camp.
They did. They took 5 healthy adult female Zanskar ponies.
And these were, what, about 6 to 8 years old?
Yeah, averaging around 6 to 8 years, weighing about 326 kilograms on average. And they put them through a 28-day winter endurance program.
28 days.
Every single day, these ponies ran on a flat track for 30 minutes, covering about 10 kilometers.
Wow.
Yeah, at a speed of roughly 6 meters per second.
Yeah.
And they only got a rest day every 6th day.
Okay, but wait, I have to jump in and push back on this experimental design for a second.
Right.
We have unbelievable sports science technology today. Why are we making researchers and ponies run around a freezing dirt track?
That's a very fair question.
I mean, why not just put these ponies on a high-tech equine treadmill inside a climate-controlled altitude chamber? Wouldn't that be infinitely easier to measure?
Oh, it would be way easier to measure, absolutely. But it would be practically useless for the military and civilian handlers who actually need this data.
Why? I mean, running is running, isn't it?
Not quite. First, there are significant differences in locomotion.
Like the physical mechanics of it.
Yeah. The way an animal pushes off the varied actual ground engages muscles completely differently than just keeping pace with a moving belt sliding backward underneath them.
Okay, that makes sense.
But there is a much more fascinating behavioral reason the researchers insisted on a field test.
Oh, really? Behavioral?
Yes. When you put an a horse, a pony, or a mule on a treadmill, they're usually held in place by a safety harness.
Right, like a safety clip on a human treadmill so you don't fly off.
Exactly. It's a kind of humane support system. Well, these animals are incredibly smart. The researchers note that when an equid gets truly exhausted on a treadmill, they eventually realize something.
What do they realize?
They realize that they can simply stop moving their legs.
No way.
Yeah, they figure out that the harness will just catch them and hold them up. They just surrender to the machine.
That is amazing. They literally just go, nope, I'm done. Let the safety net take me.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that out on a 15,000-foot mountain pass, carrying ammunition or rations, there is no humane support harness to catch you.
Right. If you stop, you fall.
Exactly. Handlers need practical information derived from actual track conditions, where the animal has to rely entirely on its own endurance and willpower. You just cannot replicate the physical and psychological reality of the mountain in a sterile laboratory.
That makes total sense. You need to test the engine on the actual road.
Precisely.
So let's look at the results. Let's look at this biological dashboard. What happens to the pony's immediate vital signs after running for 30 minutes in freezing thin air?
Well, the immediate physiological responses are massive. The engine immediately revs to its absolute limit.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
The researchers saw the animal's heart rates, pulse rates, and respiration rates shoot up by roughly 36 to 50% immediately after the exercise.
Wow.
Yeah, and their rectal temperatures also spike significantly.
Which, you know, if you are a handler looking at a pony panting that hard, might look alarming. But this is actually the engine functioning exactly as it should.
Exactly. It's totally normal.
Uh-huh.
The heart is desperately trying to pump blood faster to circulate what little oxygen is available in that thin air.
Right, and the lungs are working overtime.
Yeah, they are pulling in air as fast as possible to extract that oxygen. And the body temperature spikes because even though they're running in sub-zero weather, the sheer physical friction and metabolic burning of intense muscle contraction produces a massive amount of internal heat.
But here is the absolute aha moment in the vital sign data for me. They measured these immediate spikes on day 1 of the boot camp.
Yes.
But then they measured them again after a 30-minute run on day 28. And by the 28th day, those massive spikes in heart rate and breathing were actually much lower than on the first day.
That is the clear proof of progressive physiological adaptation.
So they were getting used to it.
Yes. Their biological engines were physically altering themselves to become more efficient at handling the exact same workload. They were getting fitter.
But just looking at a pony breathing slightly less heavily on day 28 doesn't give us the predictive warning lights we need. To really understand how they are adapting and to see if the engine is taking hidden damage, we have to look deeper.
Right. We have to look at the blood.
Because blood is basically the ultimate window into the body's overall health.
It is. It physically interacts with every single biological system. So the researchers pulled blood samples before and after the runs throughout the 28 days to look at the hematological parameters, the cellular component.
And let me tell you, what they found about how a pony's blood reacts to a sprint is unbelievable.
It really is.
Immediately after the exercise, the pony showed a massive, sudden surge in red blood cells, hemoglobin, hematocrit, white blood cells, granulocytes, and platelets floating in their bloodstream.
A huge spike across the board.
Now, if you live at high altitude for months, your body will slowly manufacture more red blood cells to help carry more oxygen.
Right, that's normal acclimatization.
But this was an immediate spike right after a 30-minute run. I mean, you can't just manufacture millions of complex blood cells out of thin air in half an hour.
You cannot, which means those cells had to be hiding somewhere.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers point straight to the spleen.
Ah, yes. The spleen's secret weapon.
In equids, the spleen acts as this massive hidden biological reservoir for extra blood cells. When the pony starts running and the oxygen demand goes through the roof, the spleen physically contracts.
Right.
It squeezes like a sponge and dumps this massive reserve of extra red blood cells and platelets directly into the active bloodstream.
It is a stunning evolutionary adaptation. Because the heart can beat as fast as it wants, but if the blood itself doesn't have enough buckets, the red blood cells, to carry the oxygen, pumping faster doesn't actually help much.
Yeah, you just have empty buckets moving around.
Exactly. By squeezing the spleen, the pony is suddenly flooding its system with millions of extra oxygen buckets.
It's quite literally like hitting a biological nitrous oxide button in a street race. The engine suddenly gets a massive immediate injection of oxygen carrying capacity.
And that sudden flood of platelets helps maintain the integrity of the blood vessels under that extreme pressure.
Wow.
But as you know, hitting the nitrous button on an engine usually comes with a cost. You're pushing the system past its normal operating limits.
Right. Which brings us to the wear and tear. How much damage is this high-altitude boot camp actually doing to the pony's internal systems? Let's look under the hood.
To answer that, the researchers shifted their focus from the blood cells themselves to the physio-biochemical markers, the metabolic proteins and enzymes circulating in the fluid of the blood.
And this is where we really start to see the biological cost. When they analyzed the blood chemistry, they found a massive spike in liver enzymes like ALT and AST.
Yeah, and an even more concerning spike in a very specific enzyme called CKMB.
Right, creatine kinase MB, which is usually only found securely locked inside healthy heart and skeletal muscle cells.
Yes.
And if an enzyme that is supposed to be locked inside a muscle cell is suddenly floating freely in the bloodstream, that means the cell wall has been breached.
Precisely. It is a definitive fingerprint of direct muscle cell damage. The sheer intensity of the strenuous exercise, combined with the lack of available oxygen to fuel that work, was actively causing the muscle tissue to break down and leak proteins into the blood.
Because they're basically suffocating while running. And you really see that suffocation reflected in another major dashboard warning light they found.
Lactic acid.
Yes, lactic acid.
Lactic acid is a crucial marker. Under normal, comfortable conditions, a body uses oxygen to cleanly burn glucose for energy. It's an efficient, clean burning process.
But when there isn't enough oxygen to keep that clean fire going, the body panics. It still needs energy to keep the pony's legs moving, so it switches to a backup generator system.
Right, an anaerobic process, one that doesn't require oxygen.
But that backup generator is incredibly messy.
It is. The byproduct of burning fuel without oxygen is lactic acid. And the data showed that the lactic acid levels in these ponies skyrocketed after their runs. Their muscles were swimming in it.
Just burning.
Yeah. It tells us they were severely starved of oxygen and frantically burning through their glycogen, their emergency energy reserves, just to survive the 30 minutes.
So the muscles are tearing, they are leaking proteins, and they are drowning in lactic acid. And on top of that, the blood tests showed elevated levels of urea and total protein.
Which points to severe fluid shifts. They were getting dehydrated.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive when you remember they were running in -6°C. I mean, how do you get dehydrated in the freezing cold?
Well, because that internal friction we talked about earlier is generating so much heat that the ponies are actually sweating profusely in the sub-zero air.
Oh, wow.
Plus, the air at that altitude is incredibly dry, so every time they exhale that rapid, panting breath, they're losing massive amounts of water vapor.
So if we step back and look at the whole picture, the muscles are taking Physical damage, they are starved for oxygen, and the body's fluid balance is thrown completely off. This is a systemic crisis.
It is.
Because the muscles are suffocating and filling with lactic acid, the body's central nervous system has to recognize that it's in trouble. That has to trigger some kind of hormonal alarm bell, right? Something has to coordinate the survival response.
It absolutely does, and the researchers cracked that too. They looked at the hormone factor and found a significant spike in cortisol following the exercise.
Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone.
Yes. But interestingly, they noted that T3, the thyroid hormone, stayed relatively stable.
But the cortisol spiked.
Massively. When the readily available sugar in the muscles starts running out because it's being burned so inefficiently, the body needs an alternative fuel source to keep the vital organs running.
Okay, so what does the cortisol do?
The spike in cortisol acts as a master switch. It initiates an emergency fuel protocol, commanding the body to start breaking down fat stores and releasing them into the bloodstream to be burned for energy.
But even burning that emergency fat comes at a microscopic cost. The study dives deep into this concept of oxidative stress.
Yes, this is perhaps one of the most critical challenges of high-altitude endurance. Whenever any biological body consumes oxygen to create energy, the chemical reaction naturally produces a small amount of unstable, highly reactive molecules called free radicals.
I've always imagined free radicals like sparks flying off a grinding wheel. You know, if there were just a few sparks, they harmlessly bounce off the floor. Your body handles them easily.
That's a very fair way to visualize it. But extreme physical exercise in a hypoxic environment causes the engine to run incredibly rough.
So more sparks?
A massive overproduction of these free radicals. It's like an engine running so dangerously rich that the exhaust itself becomes corrosive and starts eating away at the internal parts.
The sparks become a blowtorch.
Exactly. When the generation of these free radicals exceeds the body's ability to safely neutralize them, you enter a state of oxidative stress.
And what does that actually do to the pony?
Those free radicals start aggressively damaging cellular tissue, which accelerates muscle fatigue and is a direct pathway to exhaustion and collapse.
But the pony's body doesn't just sit there and let itself be corroded from the inside out. It actively fights back. The researchers looked at the body's internal defense system.
Right, specifically measuring a couple of heavy-hitting scavenger enzymes that act as the body's built-in antioxidants.
Yeah, things like afrapferic reducing antioxidant power and GPX glutathione peroxidase.
And the data showed a fascinating response. Immediately after the endurance exercise, the levels of these antioxidant enzymes surged significantly.
So the body was actively ramping up its internal defenses.
Yes, deploying these microscopic scavengers to hunt down and neutralize the free radicals before they could cause catastrophic tissue damage.
It is a literal microscopic war zone in there. The body is tearing itself apart to keep moving while simultaneously rushing repair crews in to patch the holes.
It is a delicate, precarious balance. And if that balance tips the wrong way, we see the final, perhaps most dangerous warning light flash on our biological dashboard.
The cytokine red flag.
Yes, the researchers found a massive spike in a specific inflammatory signaling molecule, an inflammatory cytokine called interleukin-6, or IL-6.
Why does an inflammatory signal matter so much in this context?
Because it connects directly back to why so many of these ponies fail or die during acclimatization. Hypoxia, that severe lack of oxygen, triggers a massive acute inflammatory response in the body.
So the immune system is getting involved now.
Yes. The immune system basically panics and overreacts to the tissue damage we've been discussing. Elevated levels of these specific cytokines are the exact same mechanism that contributes to acute mountain sickness and high-altitude pulmonary edema in humans.
Where the lungs literally fill with fluid because the inflammatory response has gone totally rogue?
Yes. So when the researchers saw this massive spike in IL-6 in the pony's blood, it was a massive red flag.
Wow.
It shows that the physical work capacity of the animal is being actively compromised by its own immune system overreacting to the altitude.
So what does this all mean? We started out looking for dashboard warning lights for these biological off-road vehicles.
And through this rigorous freezing field test, we found them. This study provides concrete, objective evidence of the physiological and biochemical breaking points in high-altitude working ponies.
We don't have to guess anymore. We don't have to load a pony up with 100 pounds of gear, send it up a mountain, and cross our fingers.
No, we don't.
Handlers and military logistics teams can take a simple blood sample. They can look at specific markers like CKMB to see how much physical damage the engine is taking.
Right.
They can measure the lactic acid to see exactly when the animal is suffocating. They can monitor the cortisol and those IL-6 levels to see if the immune system is about to trigger mountain sickness.
It completely revolutionizes deployment strategies. By evaluating these specific biomarkers, you can objectively identify the elite, highly fit ponies capable of safely handling the extreme workloads.
And just as importantly, you can identify the vulnerable ones.
Exactly, and protect them from being pushed past their breaking point,
Yeah.
saving lives and preventing logistical disasters.
It's incredible. And honestly, for you listening right now, whether you are an endurance athlete trying to train at altitude, or someone fascinated by extreme survival, or just an animal lover, understanding these biological markers reveals the incredibly precarious tightrope that all living things walk.
It really does. The line between peak performance and complete systemic failure isn't magic. It is written entirely in our biochemistry.
Yeah, it is a constant dynamic negotiation between the environment trying to shut the body down and the biology fighting to keep the lights on.
Beautifully said.
It really is. And I want to leave you with one final, totally mind-bending thought that the researchers briefly touch on at the end of the study.
Oh, the nutritional aspect.
Yes. They suggest that now that we have charted these specific biochemical parameters, it opens the door for targeted nutritional interventions to improve performance.
Right.
Think about the implications of that for a second. We now have the map. We know the exact biochemical point of failure. We know precisely the moment the muscles start leaking proteins, the moment the lactic acid floods the system, and the exact moment the body's internal antioxidant defenses are overwhelmed by corrosive free radicals.
It's all mapped out.
So if we have that map, could we eventually design a specialized high-altitude superfeed?
Wow, a super feed.
Yeah, like a precise nutritional supplement given to the ponies before a trek that chemically artificially boosts those antioxidant scavengers. A feed that chemically rewires their metabolic limits before their hooves ever hit the trail.
That is a staggering thought.
And if we can map that out and design a biological override for a Zanskar pony, what does that mean for human mountaineers? Or high-altitude rescue teams? Or troops?
The applications could be endless.
We started this deep dive just looking for a way to read the warning lights on the dashboard, but it turns out if you know exactly how to read the lights, you might just figure out how to completely rebuild the engine.